So I just want to mention tonight's shir is sponsored by Noah Bickelman and his wife, and it's in the memory of his wife who had passed away, Tamar Bas Oded and Suri Chaya, and he'll say a few words, and then the Rabbi will give the shir. Just you can hold that.
Okay, Rabbi, thank you. So just a couple words about Tamar Shalom. Thank you all for coming, those who I don't know and those who I know. She was an incredible person, a Jewish educator, in your style, actually, a lot of Ahavat Yisrael. She taught for most of the years. The first year she taught first grade, then she taught kindergarten in a Oakland Hebrew day school. And she taught Limudei Kodesh to the kids. Very profound experience, and those who come to the gathering tomorrow, she's buried in Tzfat, those who come to Tzfat tomorrow, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how she had a capacity to focus on the two aspects of the mahut, of the essence of the child, as part of Am Yisrael and as the individual that each of them was. And that was a profound experience for myself, for her students, for the parents of the students. That stood with them for basically their whole lives, has stood with them, and they remember her fondly, and as we all do. So this shir is in her honor, her memory. Amen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I hope that all of our Divrei Torah tonight should be ilui, nishmat. It's a wonderful thing that a person who devoted her years to Ahavat Yisrael and chinuch and giving children inspiration, her goodness continues to operate in the world, and you should have much comfort. It's interesting that this just reminds me of a famous quip that they attribute to the Vilna Gaon. I'm not entirely sure if it's true. I have a feeling maybe it's not true. But they say that the Vilna Gaon said that the only Rebbe he really respected was the teacher who taught him the Aleph Beis, because that's the only thing he knew was absolutely true. Says anything else? Anything else someone taught, you're not 100% sure beyond that point. So the influence of the early year teachers is so phenomenally great. I remember myself, those early teachers I had, and what an impact they made. Okay, so tonight I want to discuss a further aspect of Matan Torah. We read last week about the Ten Commandments, and this week we have many Mishpatim, many civil laws, many interpersonal laws, Bein Adam Lechaveiro. And in many, many ways, this mirrors the structure of the Ten Commandments themselves. All of us know that the first 5 of the Dibros are generally described as Bein Adam Lamakom, between man and God. And the second 5 are generally described as Bein Adam Lechaveiro. And you kind of have that mirroring here, in which Mishpatim moves away from the Bein Adam Lamakom and primarily, although not exclusively, deals with Bein Adam Lechaveiro in amplification. Now, just a few ha'arot on that famous distinction. That is, a lot of people ask the question about the positioning of honoring your parents, kibbud av v'em. That is commandment number 5. Now, the first 4, I am the Lord your God, which is the mitzvah of emunah in Hashem, and you shall not have other gods, do not take Hashem's name in vain, observe the Shabbos. Those are, of course, duties that we owe to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But kibbud av v'em, the way we honor our parents, that seems to be the realm of interpersonal behavior. So if the first 5 are Bein Adam Lamakom, why is kibbud av v'em in the 5th place? Now, you could answer, well, that would throw off the symmetry. Instead of 5, 5, you'd have 4, 6, okay, whatever it would be. But the truth is, the second 5 have such fewer words that even if you would add kibbud avim, in terms of words, the first group would still have more words. So there are 2 thoughts that are given why kibbud avim is included as a bein adam lamakom, and not just a bein adam, or not only a bein adam lechaveiro. And that is, number 1, the yesod of kibbud avim is the idea of hakaras hatov, gratitude. I have to be grateful to my parents. For most of us, there are so many reasons we're grateful. But even if, parents abandoned us, they abused us, even if they gave us up for adoption at birth, the one thing they gave us that cannot be taken away from their credit is they gave us life. And because they gave us life, everything that we can possibly accomplish that is worthy, that is good, is because of our parents. So yeah, many of us might have tinus and arguments and complaints, but overall they gave us life. And the yesod of kibbud avim is hakarat hatov, to those who enabled you to accomplish whatever it is that you can accomplish in life. And that is the stepping stone to ultimate gratitude to the Creator. If one is grateful to their parents, number 1, that means they appreciate the gift of life. They have gratitude for those who gave life. That can be extrapolated to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If one does not have that basic fundamental midah of gratitude, then one cannot have a relationship with God either. So seen in that way, kibbud avim is a stepping stone to being able to have gratitude towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gratitude is so fundamental, and I think I've made this point even more than once, but I'll say it again because it comes up and it's an important point. Gratitude is so fundamental to the Jewish personality that it is actually what the word Jew means. Let's look at for a moment at the etymology of the word Yahoodi. Now, in some American dictionaries of slang, if you look up the word Jew, they will tell you that the slang usage in the South is that it is a verb that means to either cheat somebody in business or at least drive a very hard bargain. So if you're doing business in Alabama, somebody might say to you, whether you're Jewish or not, don't Jew around with me. Now that's a slang, that's not an accepted usage, and I remember when the American Heritage Dictionary had Jew in that definition, there was the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, had a whole protest. On the other hand, listen, if you're a slang dictionary, you ought to have the slang usage. I don't see any problem with that. Put in kike, put in all those terms, and you want to know what the language is. If somebody calls me a kike, I want to be able to look it up, etc. But if Jew has a meaning as a verb at all, it means to be a grateful person. And the proof of the matter is, because Yehudi is really from Yehudah. Yehudah was Leah's 4th child, and she called him Yehudah because she said, Hapam Oded Hashem. Now I am grateful to God. And it's very interesting if you examine the names, if I can go backwards a little bit, you examine the names that Leah gave her children. The first 3 were almost in the nature of either complaints or hope that things will get better. Reuven, God has seen my suffering, and he has given me a son, so my husband will finally like me. Shimon, God has heard my pain and my cry, and now my husband will like me. Levi, now my husband will accompany me because I've given him 3 sons. The first 3 sons, it was always the hope, the poignancy of the hope that she'll get a better relationship with Yaakov as a result. Why that didn't happen, difficult question, I'll leave it for now. But only with Yehuda do you have undiminished gratitude. Now I am grateful to God. And that's part of being a mature person, is to not focus on those things that you wish you had and you don't have, but to focus on the goodness of what Hashem has given you. This is my life, Leah is saying. Maybe I'm not going to be the number one wife. Although Lamaisa, remember, it is Leah that is buried next to Yaakov in Marat HaMachpelah. But at least in life, I'm not going to be the number one wife, so to speak, in terms of affection. But I will be the mother. I will be all of these things that Hashem has given me. So Yehuda expresses kind of the mature level of focusing on what Hashem has given you, as opposed to kind of wishing and looking at it as a stepping stone for something else. You live in the moment. You cherish what Hashem has given you. That's one aspect of the gratitude of Yehuda. There's a second aspect that Rashi brings. Rashi brings the Medrash that Leah knew there would be 12 tribes, and there are 4 women from whom the 12 tribes will come. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. Each wife is entitled, so to speak, to 3. When you get what is magia lach, what you think you're entitled to, you don't feel grateful. It's magia li. But when she got yoser al chelki, when she got more than she was entitled, that generates gratitude. Lamaisa, she wound up with 6, but when she hit number 4, she was already getting more. So the Sfas Emes says the reason why every Jew is called Yehudi, even though we're not all from Shevet Yehuda. Now, historically, the reason is because the kingdom of Yisrael was destroyed more than 100 years before the Churban Beis HaMikdash. So by the time Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first Mikdash and exiled the Jewish people, they were, so to speak, residents of the Malchut of Yehuda. That's the simple reason. But at least al pi Chasidus, the idea of Yehuda is every single Jew has to go through life with the attitude that Hashem has given me more than I'm entitled. And therefore the very definition of Yehudi is Natalti Yeser Al Chelki. And to go back to Kibbut Aviyim, that is why Kibbut Aviyim is such a foundation in Bein Adam Lamakom, not only Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, because if Kibbut Aviyim inculcates within my personality the idea of appreciation, of gratitude, that then enables me to have that feeling towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. So Kibbut Aviyim, the first answer that we're giving is that Kibbut Aviyim belongs to the first group of Dibrot because it is the stepping stone and the mechanism that enables a relationship to God by inculcating gratitude for the gift of life that your parents have given you, and by extension that the Almighty has given you. But there's a second aspect, which is somewhat related, but it is a distinct point. And that is the image that we form of God, to a large degree, is based on the image and the relationship we had with our parents. You might remember, both as a child and as a parent, that there's a certain stage in the relationship where your parents are like God. You know, Daddy is the strongest person in the world, and Ima is the nicest person, the smartest person, whatever it would be. Now that passes after a while. Our children don't idolize us in perpetuity, but there's a time, it's very, very heady, that you're really the greatest person that exists. And the thing is that if your parents are like your initial God, and you see your parents as loving, stable, consistent, dependable, trustworthy, then a person grows up to understand, wow, Hashem is the same way. I can depend on Hashem, because Hashem is like, I'm going to be just simplistic here, Hashem is like 1,000,000,000 times more than Abba and Ima. So whatever Abba and Ima is, Hashem is, 1,000,000,000 times more. Well, that also works in the negative way, unfortunately. If as a parent I'm arbitrary, I'm unpredictable, I'm distant, I'm rejecting, and And God is the super parent that's 1 billion times more than whatever Abba and Ima is. It's going to be very, very difficult for a person to form a loving relationship with God. Now, I say difficult, I don't mean impossible, because we are not perpetually children. We certainly have the capacity to break out of limitations that were imposed by our environment. It can be done, and it must be done, and we have a responsibility to do it. But I think we have to be honest. It's hard. It's hard. You can be 30, 40, 50, 60, or 70. And some of those formative experiences that we had at 5 or 6 or even younger continue to be part of our personality. There is a child that is still within even the most mature adult. Sometimes that child is hurting. So the thing is, it could very well be that the positioning of Kibbud Avim in the first 5 commandments is not so much a message for the child, but maybe it's a message for the parent. If you want your child to have a relationship with God, then you have to be a person who is worthy of being honored, a person that is an honorable parent, in the sense that through you, your child with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so that's why Kibbud Avim is put up there. Now, interestingly enough, in Parshat Mishpatim, we actually have 2 what you might call negatives of Kibbud Avim. There are 2 prohibitions in Parshat Mishpatim that carry with them a death penalty. Makeh aviv v'imo, you hit your parent, that means you make a black and blue mark on your parent, or you draw blood. And makalel aviv v'imo, one who curses by using the name of God to their parent, mot yumat, very serious. Right? That's obviously the extremity of not doing Kibbud Avim. To hit, to draw blood, to curse. What a serious thing. And I don't want to get into a whole halachic discussion, but let me emphasize that this even has interesting ramifications of whether if a son is a physician, son or a daughter is a physician, are they allowed to perform a medical procedure on a parent that involves the drawing of blood? The Gemara has a shayla on this. Is it permitted? Is it not permitted? On one hand, it might be permitted because even though you're drawing blood, but it's being done for a good purpose, a positive purpose, it's not being done as an expression of hatred or resentment. On the other hand, in a literal sense, you're makeh aviv v'imo. So the Shulchan Aruch actually paskins that basically a child should not do any medical procedure, any procedure, even taking out a thorn, that might involve any possibility of bleeding, if there is another qualified person that can do it. If there's not another qualified person, then it's going to be mutter, and there's a machlokas achronim. What if there is a qualified person, but that qualified person is going to cost money, and dad says, I want you to do it for free? So machlokas, is that considered qualified or not qualified? Or what is it? Okay, so I don't want to get into it, but the point basically is that makeh aviv v'imo even extends to that particular area. Okay, but be it as it may, the fact that Parshat Mishpatim is so focused on Bein Adam L'Chaveiro reminds us how important Bein Adam L'Chaveiro is. And again, I don't want to, get on a soapbox, but one of the problems that we face sometimes in Klal Yisrael is that when we define a person as a religious Jew, from whether dati, whether charedi, whatever word you want to use, we often automatically think, oh, that means they daven every day, they say brachos, they keep Shabbos, they keep kosher. But one has to remember, that is only half of the Torah. Bein Adam L'Chaveiro is the Torah as well. Not speaking Lashon Hara, kindness, consideration, charity, Avat Yisrael, Midot Tovot. So, in a sense, sometimes people ask me that how come Orthodox Jews are not honest in business? Now, The truth of the matter is that is an unfair question. It is true that there are some Orthodox Jews who are not honest in business, but there are plenty of non-Orthodox Jews and plenty of non-Jews who are not honest in business either. It's not the case that Orthodox Jews are disproportionately dishonest. Okay, but that's not such a great defense, really. Okay, it's true. We're no worse. We're no worse than anybody else. Okay, is that the goal? So one answer you could give if you want to be flippant, it's a flip answer. It's called the no true Scotsman argument, and that is, there is no such thing as an Orthodox Jew who's dishonest in business, because the same way there's no such thing as an Orthodox Jew who eats chazer, because if he eats chazer, he's not an Orthodox Jew. So if he's not honest in business, he's not an Orthodox Jew. So you're raising an impossible situation. There is no such category. But once again, the guy will say, come on, you know what I mean, though. Okay, let's not use the word Orthodox Jew. Let's not use the word dati. Let's not even use the word chariti. Those are definitions. But how come a Jew can keep Shabbos and keep kashrus and daven 3 times a day and put on tefillin and wear tzitzis and be careful about shatnez and be dishonest in business? You can't get away with definitional, finagling in that particular situation. And the short answer is that, unfortunately, we often have a mental construct that the meaning of Shmirat HaTorah is Bein Adam LaMakom, and we don't think about Bein Adam LaChavera. And that's really a big, big chisaron. I remember many, many years ago, I was giving a shir to a non-observant group of women, and after the shir, I don't even remember what I was talking about, one of the women went over to me and she prefaced her question with, I'm not as religious as you, but whatever the question was, I don't even remember that. But what I said to her at the time was that, why do you say you're not as religious as me? Maybe you're more religious than me. It may be, perhaps I keep the Shabbat, I keep kashrut, and you don't yet do that, but maybe you honor your parents more. Maybe you're more considerate of other people. That's also part of the Jewish religion, a very important part of the Jewish religion. So when I look at a secular Jew, or I look at a non-religious Jew, I'm using the word just the way we normally use them, I can't really say I'm more religious than they are. It could very well be in certain aspects of Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, they might be much, much better than me. Right? So labels ultimately are kind of not a meaningful way of describing people. There are people who focus on one thing and the other, and we all have work to do. We all have to work to try to improve ourselves, and we share that common responsibility. So the primacy of Bein Adam L'Chaveiro emerges from Parshat Mishpatim. And I'll give you a visual that proves this point. This is a very fascinating observation from the Mabit. Who is the Mabit? Mabit is Moshe ben Yosef Trani. He was a gadol in the time of Rav Yosef Karo. In fact, he was Rav Yosef Karo's based in Tzfat. Rav Yosef Karo was the Av Beit Din, and the Mabit was the second in command. They actually didn't get along on certain matters because they had some major, huge halachic disagreements on things. And at one point, Rav Yosef Karo threatened to put the Mabit in Cherem, to actually excommunicate the Mabit, unless he retracted from various halachic rulings. And the halachic rulings pertain to Shemitah. In fact, it's kind of the basis of the Heter Mechira even today, meaning, do the laws of Shemitah apply to the produce grown by non-Jews? And that was a machlokas of Yosef Karo and the Mabit. The Mabit actually took the position that Shemitah did apply, which would have rendered the Heter Mechira absolutely impossible, and Rav Yosef Karo, and as a result, the Mabit paskins that since Shemitah produce is exempt from Truma and Maser, any produce that was grown in the fields of non-Jews could be eaten with the laws of Shemitah, but you didn't have to take off the Truma and the Maser. Rav Yosef Karo ruled the other way around, that the laws of Shemitah do not apply, therefore you must take off the Trumas and the Masras. And when the Mabit was telling people they could buy payros from the non-Jew and not take off Truma and Maser, Rav Yosef Karo threatened to put him in Chayrim unless he retracted. But the Mabit was a great and enormous Talmid Chacham, a great posek, but he also wrote an interesting book on Jewish philosophy called Beit Elokim. And in the Beit Elokim, he points out an interesting point. If we assume, as we do assume, that the first 5 dibrot are Bein Adam La Makom, and the second 5 are Bein Adam La Chaveiro, and Moshe Rabbeinu was carrying these 2 tablets down, you'll notice one thing. The number of words, the number of letters in the first 5 is much, much larger than the number of letters in the second 5. Right? The second 5 are staccato, lo tirtzach, lo tinaf, lo tignov, etc. The first 5 are longer, by and large. Now, if we assume that they took up the same amount of space on the surface of the tablet, they were engraved, then it must be, in terms of font size, or in terms of engraving size, that the letters of the second 5 were much larger than the letters of the first 5. So, when Moshe Rabbeinu was coming down from Har Sinai, now, the Jewish people never saw the first luchot because they were smashed because of the Chet Ego. But let's talk about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, Moshe is bringing down the second luchot. And you see him coming down from that mountain on Yom Kippur. And you see something is engraved on those tablets. And you put on your glasses to try to get a look of what am I going to see on those luchot. Which mitzvot are you going to see first? When Moshe Rabbeinu comes down, the Mabit says it's going to be Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, because Behechrech, the Bein Adam L'Chaveiro were larger letters than the Bein Adam L'Makom, and from here we see the absolute primacy of Bein Adam L'Chaveiro. And of course it's been pointed out many, many times that every Bein Adam L'Chaveiro is by definition also a Bein Adam L'Makom, because Hashem has commanded you to keep those obligations. So by definition, it involves both Chaveiro and Makom. So now though, let me just allude to a very, very interesting question. Chazal say in Masechah Shabbos, on the verse, Vayisyatzvu b'tachtit hahar, they stood literally under the mountain. Now, Lefi Pshuto, it simply means the Jewish people are standing at the foot of the mountain. That is Pshuto Shel Mikra. But literally, Tachtit is under the mountain. So Chazal say, Hashem held the mountain over the heads of Am Yisrael and said, hey guys, you have a choice. If you accept the Torah, that's wonderful. If not, I'm going to flatten you. Kafa alayim har kigigit. He held the mountain over us as if it was a huge barrel that could crush us. And we agreed to the Torah because Hashem basically said, accept the Torah or you'll be crushed. So, Tosfos asks the obvious question. This implies that Kabbalah Torah came through duress, it came through coercion. And yet we find that the Jewish people are always praised because Hashem offered the Torah to all the nations of the world and they turned it down. And the reason they turned it down is because they wanted to know what's in it first. And Hashem picked a mitzvah that was particularly difficult for them, whether it was not killing, not stealing, and they said, we don't want it. With the Jewish people, it never came to that stage because when he offered the Torah, we said, Naseh v'nishma. Naseh v'nishma means we give Hashem a blank check. We accept, and then let's hear. If you would have said Nishma v'naseh, that would imply, let's hear what you're offering, and then we'll see if we'll do it. Naseh v'nishma is unconditional. So Tosos asks the question, is there not a contradiction? On one hand, the Jewish people said Naseh v'nishma, and they're praised for that. The unconditional acceptance. But then you're telling me they were forced into it. Right? How do you reconcile Kaf Alem Har Kegigit with Naseh v'Nishma? So Tosfos answers the following. Tosfos says, an interesting point, it's a davar pashut ma'od that they accepted the Torah voluntarily. It was Naseh v'Nishma. But then they got so scared with the thunder and the lightning and everything else that they wanted to change their mind. They said, let's get out of here. So the Kaf Aleim Har Kegigit was not that which induced their acceptance, but it simply prevented them from changing their minds on that which they already accepted. That's Tosfos' reconciliation of it. In the Medrash Tanchuma, which is fascinating, Tosfos doesn't bring this Medrash, which is much earlier, an actual Medrash Tanchuma, there's a different answer that it says. It says, Naseh v'Nishma is on the Torah shebichtav, the written Torah. I mean, there is no written Torah yet, but on what will be eventually written down. And the Kaf Aleim Har Kegigit, that we had to be forced, is going on the Torah Shebal Peh. And part of that is because the Torah Shebichsav is open to all sorts of interpretations. So, for example, the Torah Shebichsav is going to say, do not do work on Shabbat. Lo taseh kol malacha. Okay, great. I love that. It means I don't go to work on Shabbat. I can go to the movies. I can go to the mall. I can go to the beach. I can drive my car or take the bus. Now in Tel Aviv, as you know, unfortunately, the buses run on Shabbat now. So it's Torah Shebal Peh that kind of circumscribes all of these activities, malacha, etc. So the Naseh v'Nishma is Torah Shebichtav. Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis is Torah Shebal Peh. Right, that's answer number 2. Answer number 3, though, is from the Maharal. And this is actually a very beautiful, beautiful answer. Kaf Aleim Har Kegigit does not mean God forced us into the Kabbalah Torah. First of all, if God forced us, that would be meaningless because we didn't accept it. It's a davar pashat. The Jewish people accepted the Torah willingly, out of love, out of devotion, out of gratitude for what they had experienced in Yetziat Mitzrayim. But after the fact, Hashem is informing them how momentously important their decision was. Basically telling them, wow, it is so lucky that you guys accepted God's Torah. Because if you wouldn't have accepted God's Torah, there would be no justification for heaven and earth and the universe. Now, I couldn't have told you that beforehand, because if I would have told you that beforehand, your acceptance would have been a coerced acceptance. I had to let you accept without knowing the consequences of your non-acceptance. But after you accepted with love and devotion, I then inform you how momentously important your decision was. So the Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis, according to the Maharal, is not communicating that we accepted the Torah by coercion, but it's communicating that without a Kabbalah Torah, the world, not just the world, the universe, has no purpose, has no tachlit. That's why on the very 6th day of creation, right, the last day of creation, Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker, Yom Hashishi. So why does it say Yom Hashishi? It should say Yom Shishi, Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi'i, Yom Chamishi. Why Yom Hashishi? So Rashi says that this is an allusion not only to that first Friday, but it's an allusion to a future 6th day, the 6th day of Sivan, when the Jewish people said Naseh v'Nishma, because it is only then that creation was completed, creation was justified. If the Jewish people would not have accepted the Torah, there would be no purpose in the universe. The universe would have ceased to exist. And Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis is expressing that idea. Your choice was so significant that otherwise there would be no purpose for the universe whatsoever. Right? So that's a yesod of the Maharal. But there's one other point I want to focus on, and that is, everyone knows that the famous words that the Jewish people accepted the Torah is, of course, Naseh v'nishma. But if you have a good memory of last week's Parsha, when before the Ten Commandments, Moshe is going back and forth giving us messages from the Almighty, it says, Vayanu kol ha'am yachtav, all the people together said, Kol asher diber Hashem naseh. Naseh. You almost feel like correcting the Baal Koreh. V'nishma. But no, the Baal Koreh is right. It doesn't say v'nishma. So where is the pasuk Naseh v'nishma? It was not in last week's parsha. It was not before the Aseret HaDibrot. There it said, Kol asher diber Hashem naseh. So the truth of the matter is, Naseh v'nishma actually parsha. At the end of Parshas Mishpatim, after all of those laws are given, there's a description of Moshe building a mizbeach, bringing korbanot, sprinkling the people with blood of the korbanot, and Moshe Rabbeinu reading, in fact it's very enigmatic, reading a document that is given the name Sefer HaBrit. He reads to them the Sefer HaBrit, Vayanu Kalan, and the people answer, Kol asher diber Hashem Naseh v'nishma. Meaning Naseh v'nishma is a response to the korbanot and the reading of the Sefer HaBris, and it is actually written in the Torah after the Aseret HaDibrot and the Mishpatim. So here, just to clarify the chronology, it's very, very important to know that there's a big machlokes, Rashi and the Ramban, how to understand the events at the end of Parshat Mishpatim. Rashi, who follows the view of Chazal in Maseches Shabbos, actually learns that the end of Parshat Mishpatim is an example of Ein Muktam Umu'uchar B'Torah, that the Torah sometimes does not follow chronological order, and all of the events that are described at the end of Parshat Mishpatim actually transpired before the Aseret HaDibros. This is how Rashi understands it, and it's based on a Gemara in Maseches Shabbos. Therefore, Moshe built the Mizbeach, Moshe sprinkled the blood, Moshe read the Sefer HaBrit, I'll come back to what that means, and the people said Naseh v'nishma on the 5th of Sivan, the day before Matan Torah. That's how Rashi learns. Now, we still have to explain, even according to Rashi, so why in Parshat Yisro does it say they said Naseh, and in Parshat Mishpatim it says they said Naseh v'nishma, if both of those were pre-Matan Torah events? I'll come back to that in a moment. But it's very important to understand when you read the Parsha that Rashi takes all of those verses at the end of Mishpatim and he puts them before the Aseret HaDibros. Now, what is the Sefer HaBrit? What is this thing that Moshe is reading? What is the Sefer HaBrit? So Rashi says, before the Aseret HaDibros, Moshe al-Pi Hashem wrote down the Torah from Bereshis until that point. It was actually a partial Sefer Torah. Meaning Hashem, I don't know when Moshe had the time, but Hashem dictated to Moshe from Bereshit bara Elokim until that point. In other words, that included the Chumash Bereshis, the stories of the Avos, Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Makos, and that was the basis of the covenant that God made with us. So according to Rashi, Sefer HaBris is none other than the Sefer Torah, plus, Rashi says, the extra commandments they were given in the oasis of Mara. They were given Parah Aduma, and actually they were given Shabbos in Mara as well, even before the Ten Commandments. Okay. Now, Ramban does have a different shita. Ramban generally does not like the rule, Ein Mukdam U'Mucher B'Torah. He cannot dismiss it legamri because Chazal use it, but Ramban never uses that rule if there's any possible way to make it chronological. And the Ramban says it happened after Matan Torah, and the Sefer Abrit is none other than Parshat Mishpatim. He read them the Mishpatim. Which means, according to Ramban, you have the interesting anomaly that Nasa v'nishma, the famous immortal words of Nasa v'nishma, according to Ramban, were not uttered before Matan Torah. They were uttered after Matan Torah. Okay, we'll leave the Ramban aside because it is not the position of Chazal. So let's focus on Rashi for a moment. So according to Rashi and Chazal, Nasa v'nishma was pre-Matan Torah. So we're back to the original question, why in Yisro does it say Naseh, and in Mishpatim, which was also the fifth of Sivan, it says Naseh v'nishma. So the Meshech Chochmah offers a beautiful, beautiful answer. And he says like this, we know that Chazal have a Messiah that in the totality of the Torah there are 613 mitzvahs. In fact, the Ramban himself wrote a kuntris how the Aseres HaDibros themselves can be an outline for all 613. He shows how all of the 613 mitzvahs can be branches or be under categories connected to the Aseres HaDibros. We know further that the 613 is subdivided into 248 positive commandments, thou shalt do, and 365 negative commandments, thou shalt not do. Now, this obviously raises different problems because we have machloksim, is something a mitzvah or not a mitzvah, so whenever you make something a mitzvah, you're going to have to take out something from the list because you got to keep the number constant. So Ramban and Rambam juggle around with this problem a lot because they have different arguments. For example, Ramban says Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. Rambam does not count it as a mitzvah. Now, if Ramban adds a mitzvah called Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, he has to take something out, so there's always this idea of working with the numbers. But the Gemara in Maseches Makos tells us that the 248 and the 365 correlate to the human body. There are 248 bones. Every positive mitzvah gives life and vibrancy to a bone. Now, we don't necessarily know which mitzvah correlates to which bone, although there is a sefer I once came across that, a later sefer that actually tries to make the exact correlation. We also don't know what it means exactly to give vibrancy to a bone. I mean, if I don't do a mitzvah, there are plenty of non-religious Jews who are very healthy physically and, can jog much better than I. So one would not automatically assume you're going to get arthritis if you don't do positive commandments. But whatever the spiritual vibrancy is, the 248 give vibrancy to the bones, and the 365 negatives, if you violate them, they hurt the sinews or ligaments in the body, the gidin. Ramach evarim shasa gidin. Now, if that's the case, you immediately have a problem. There has never been a person from the beginning of creation till the end of time who will be capable of keeping all 613 commandments. It's impossible. Many commandments are only for men and not for women. Many commandments are only in Eretz Yisrael, obviously. Many commandments require a Beit HaMikdash, korbanot. Kohanim have certain mitzvot that other people don't have. And lehepech, there may be certain mitzvot that other people can do, like kvurat hamet, that a Kohen cannot do. Now, that would normally not be a problem. You do what you can do, and you don't do what you don't do. But if you're telling me that the 613 mitzvot give vibrancy to my bones and to my ligaments, then by definition, if I am missing any mitzvah, I am a cripple. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has set up a system where it is impossible to have spiritual health. Because if the 613 correlates to my overall health of Evarim and Didim, then how is it yitochen for even the greatest tzaddik in the world to be mashlim, to complete his binyan? Hashem is creating a system where you just can't win. It just becomes impossible. That it does not seem to be just or fair. So there are two answers that Mefarshim give to this question. One is, this is the greatness of Torah learning. Because Chazal say, for example, about korbanos, that if you learn the laws of korbanos, it is as if you brought a korban. So when I learn the halachot of mitzvot that I'm not able to do, I vicariously get the chiyut, the life force, and the light of that mitzvah, the chiyut and the or, enter my neshama through the pathway of Talmud Torah. That's why the Chavetz Chaim pointed out, people sometimes think, oh, it's not important to learn those parts of the Torah that are not relevant to contemporary practice. It may be the opposite. I bedafka need to learn those things because that's the only way my neshama connects to it. You know, everyone knows the Chavetz Chaim wrote so many svarim on the laws of Lashon Hara, the laws against Lashon Hara, the Mishnah Brura, which are all of the laws that apply to Shabbat and Chag and Tefillah. The Chavetz Chaim was very practically oriented, obviously. He wrote books on Tznius and Avat Yisrael and Midot and Mishkalot, honesty in business. He looked at the practical problems that Jews were facing and he tried to address them. But what's a little less known is that the Chavetz Chaim popularized the study of the laws of korbanot, which had been neglected for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's why today, learning Kachim is the highest prestigious thing. You go to Brisk, that's like the highest level. And when the Chavetz Chaim, and he did lovely, he wrote original works on Kachim, he reprinted old works. He actually did the equivalent of a Rif on Kachim. The Rif summarized all the Talmudic discussions on the Masechtos that are Nogei L'Maisa. The Chavetz Chaim made his own Rif on Zevachim, Menachos, an amazing thing, together with commentaries. So someone had the temerity to accuse the Chavetz Chaim, why are you so involved in impractical things? Why don't you get involved in more practical things? Which is crazy. The Chavetz Chaim wrote the Mishnah Brura. And the Chavetz Chaim gave two answers to why he's so involved in Kachim. Number one, he said, if you really believe in Mashiach, why do you assume this is not practical? What happens if Mashiach comes tomorrow? Somebody has to know the laws of Korbanos. So, when you learn Kachim, you are actually affirming your belief in Biat HaMashiach. That was answer number one, which is not relevant for our discussion. Answer number two, which is relevant, is exactly the point that I said, and that is, if your neshama needs the shleimut of all of the 613 mitzvot, and there are mitzvot that your neshama, that you are not able to perform, the only way your neshama gets the light of that mitzvah is by learning about it. Because you can't do it. And therefore, the fact that you can't do it makes learning about it even more imperative. That's method number one of how I acquire the shleimut of 613. But there is also method number two, and that's Avat Yisrael. Now you may say, how does Avat Yisrael give me shleimut of Tayag? Because here is the thing. If you look at yourself as an isolated individual, what can I do as me? The answer is there'll be a whole bunch of the Tayag that I cannot do. But if I connect myself to the totality of Am Yisrael, which is a transcendental entity with a past, present, future, And I am simply a limb on the organism, or even an atom on this organism. Well, the same way each of us, right? Every cell in our body is not the same cell we were born with, by and large. Right? Our cells change. Like that's actually an interesting philosophical issue of identity. Am I the same person? Am I not the same person? Well, famous Greek philosopher Heraclitus, a pre-Platonic philosopher, said, you cannot step into the same river twice, even though it's the same river. The water is not the same molecules of water. So, Klal Yisrael is eternal. So if I connect myself to the Am, then the mitzvos of the past become the mitzvos of the present. The mitzvos of the men are the mitzvos of the women. The mitzvos of the Kohen is the mitzvah of the Israel. So I can do this. I can do the 613 mitzvos not as an individual, but as a chelek of Klal Yisrael, to which I am mechaber myself. So we start off with this question: how can I be mashlim my neshama with the light of so many mitzvahs that's impossible for me to do? Answer 1, the pathway of Talmud Torah. Answer 2, the pathway of Avat Yisrael. So says the Meshech Chochmah, that's merumaz in the 2 psukim. Note that in Parshat Yisrael it says, Vayanu kol ha'am yachdav. Underline the word yachdav. Yachdav connotes unity, togetherness, Avat Yisrael. When there is unity, togetherness, Avat Yisrael, we can stand before the Almighty and say, everything you commanded us, we can do. I can't do it all. You can't do it all. We can do it all. Kol asher diber Hashem naseh. But Parshas Mishpatim, even though it says Vayanu kolam, it does not say Yachdav. The word Yachdav is omitted. So the Torah is merames that there will be times in Jewish history, maybe most of the time in Jewish history, where we're not biyachdos. There is polarization. There is dissension. There is machlokas. We are separated from each other. We're not connected to each other. In those times, we cannot declare to God, everything you said we can do. Because we can't do it. If I'm separated, I can't do it. So you got to go to plan B. Kol asher diber Hashem naseh. Everything Hashem said we can do through nishmat, which is referring to learning and understanding. So Memela, when there's a yachdav, we can say Kol asher diber Hashem naaseh. When there's not a yachdav, we need plan B of Talmud Torah. Nishma is understood as we endeavor to understand by learning Torah. So these are the 2 pathways, Avas Yisrael and Limud HaTorah. Now initially, these are being described as 2 alternative roads to the Shleimut of Taryag. But in reality, these are 2 roads that ultimately converge and become one road. Because Chazal teach us, the end of Maseches Brachos, actually many people say this every day in davening at the end, Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam. Those who learn Torah increase peace in the world. If for whatever reason this is not what you experience, that's a good question. I'm not going to answer it right now. I don't know if I have an answer. But Chazal tell us that the learning of Torah is a force that increases peace in the world. That's a big message for us. When we learn Torah, it should bring us closer to other Jews, not further. Because Talmidei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Biola. Right? I'm just saying what it says. So if that's not what it's doing, then we have to ask, are we learning Torah the right way? Because it's not doing what it's supposed to happen. So therefore, if the Talmud Torah kicks in because we're not in a matzav of yachtav, it should eventually bring us to the matzav of yachtav. You know, it's remarkable. You know, the Chazon Ish, and again, the Chazon Ish is essentially the creator of the Haredi community of Eretz. Maybe it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's not too much of an exaggeration. I mean, there were many, many great Gedolim, but the Chazon Ish institutionally, although he was very tzanua, he had no official position in Eretz Yisrael. He was not a Rav, he was not a Rosh Yeshiva. He often didn't even allow his name to be used in various proclamations. But he really was, he created the whole infrastructure, all the yeshivas, the kollalim. He was behind everything. So the Chazon Ish is really the ultimate representative of the Haredi world. He created it. Not single-handedly, but almost single-handedly. Because again, they were great Gedolim, but they were not as activist as him. He has created everything. Very amazing. And it's interesting. He was not, he came to Eretz Yisrael when he was not a young man. He came to Eretz Yisrael. He was already in his late 50s. And in Europe, he was totally tzanua. He was just learning. He was not involved in any communal affairs. And the last 20 years of his life, he was like a tornado. He was a dynamo involved in everything. Now, you may know that the Chazon Ish did not have any children. And he would often have teenagers live in their home. And some of these teenagers were not even religious at all. And they didn't become religious. They came to his house not religious, and they left his house not religious. But it's so amazing that all of the children that stayed there only speak of this example of ultimate Haredeism, you might say. They speak of him with tremendous love and acceptance, and how much he cared about them, and how much he was trying to help them become better in every way, and how he cared for the Gashmiyat, not only the Ruchmiyat, and how he understood that not everybody was ready for a certain level of intensity. And to go further, we even have proof of this in Europe. There are many autobiographies. There are many biographies of the Chazon Ish. But most of them are written by his Talmidim, so obviously, they're going to build him up to be superhuman. But the best biography of the Chazon Ish is actually a fictional book, which does not use the Chazon Ish's name, but everybody knows that the character is modeled after the Chazon Ish. And this is by the famous Yiddish writer, who just died a few years ago, Chaim Grada. Chaim Grada was not a religious man at all. He was not religious at all. But he grew up in Vilna, and he lost his father at a young age, and his mother was looking for a tutor to learn with her son, and she came across this young man who was a very, very, very fine person, who later became known as the Chazon Ish, but he was a young married man in Vilna, and he was Chaim Grada's tutor for a few years. Quite amazing. He was mamish the private tutor of Chaim Grada. And Chaim Grada, actually a very excellent writer, Chaim Grada wrote about the world of Eastern European Jewry, and one of his characters, everybody knows, is modeled after the Chazon Ish. I don't remember the name of the character that's modeled after him. And you can see that this character is portrayed, although Chaim Grada is kind of rough on different Rabbanim and different Dayanim, and he portrays what he thought was hypocrisy, and what he thought was duplicity, and what he thought was not caring about people. But the character of the Chazon Ish is portrayed in total holiness and goodness. And to me, that is worth even more than the authorized biographies written by his disciples, because here you have a person who is totally rachok from everything the Chazon Ish stood for, and still he saw that goodness. He saw the Avat Yisrael. He saw the Achdus. And that's really the sign of true greatness. That the Torah is not merachek. The Torah does not create walls. The Torah does not create barriers. but it opens doors. And even those who are not yet connected to Torah will see its sweetness and will see its goodness. And that's the mission, I think, we have to try to incorporate in our own lives as well. By the way, a little bit of unrelated trivia, but I do want to say this. Chaim Grada died. His wife, I think, is still alive. Maybe she died a little while ago. But she was very... she did not allow a lot of his work to be published because she didn't like the translators. So as a result, many writers disliked her intensely. That she was not Jewish, and Chaim Grada married a Goy. You're going to read that a lot. I do want to be Melamed Zechus. He did not marry a Goy. She was or is a Jewish woman, even though not religious either. And part of spreading a rumor that she was a Goy was part of the anger and hatred that she did not allow his writings to be published for so many years because she never agreed with the translation. So I just wanted to correct a misimpression that I myself had for many years. Okay, again, not relevant to anything, but just a little bit of bibliographical knowledge. Anyway, be well and you should have a good week.
Yiboneh Archives.